60 million years ago, following the mass extinction of the dinosaurs, giant snakes roamed the Americas. The biggest of these snakes was known as Titanoboa, and it was just as terrifying as it sounds. Related to modern-day boa constrictors, Titanoboa was a monster. Thankfully, Titanoboa went extinct. But what if it didn't? That's exactly what we're going to talk about right now on Life's Biggest Questions. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that asks the questions everyone else is too afraid to ask. I'm your host, Charlotte Dobre, and if you enjoy our content, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Is there anything scarier than a gigantic snake? Maybe me when I wake up in the morning. A team of scientists found a Titanoboa fossil at an open pit coal mine in Colombia. The Titanoboa makes modern-day anacondas look like toys. According to fossils, Titanoboa was 12.8 meters or 42 feet long and weighed about 1,100 kilograms or 2,500 pounds. But because snake fossils are extremely hard to find, it's not completely out of the question that it could have grown to be even larger. It's believed that Titanoboa ate large turtles and Crocodilomorpha, which were essentially giant crocodiles. The Titanoboa lived in what is believed to have been the first recorded neotropical forest that ever existed, where Central and South America exist today. How did Titanoboa get so big? Well, back during the Paleocene era, the Earth was quite a bit warmer. The average temperature of its habitat was on average about 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm climate allowed for cold-blooded snakes to grow very large, much larger than any snake we currently know of. Even to this day, as you move away from the equator, ectothermic animals decrease in size. Titanoboa became the rainforest's top predator, and for good reason. It is the biggest snake to ever have lived. Titanoboa killed its victims using asphyxiation, where it wrapped itself tightly around its prey and squeezed until its prey suffocated. Once you're in Titanoboa's mouth, there is no escape. Row upon row of sharp, curved teeth that point to the rear of its mouth keep the prey moving toward the stomach. Titanoboa slithered around in water and swamps. Thankfully, it began to go extinct toward the beginning of the Miocene era. But now that you know a little about Titanoboa, let's talk about what would happen if it never went extinct in the first place. First things first, because Titanoboa would need to live in warmer climates, it would only be able to survive in rainforests near the equator. This would be good news for everyone who lived farther north or south of the equator. It would, however, mean bad news for any Central and South Americans that lived anywhere near the habitat of the Titanoboa. Indigenous people in the area like the Aztecs and the Incas probably would have regarded Titanoboa as a god and would have made sacrifices to it. That is, if Titanoboa didn't prey on them. Perhaps Incas or Aztecs wouldn't have even existed. As Titanoboa hunted mostly in water, a way for forest-dwelling people to escape it would be to build their homes in trees. The entire history of Central American indigenous peoples might be different. In modern times, there would of course be hunters who would try to track down Titanoboa for various reasons, perhaps even for food. Titanoboa meat would be considered a delicacy, one food connoisseurs would be eager to put on their plates. But catching a Titanoboa would not be easy. Navigating the difficult, swampy terrain of the rainforest would be, needless to say, hard. But one thing you could do to lure it close would be to set a trap. Crocodiles, the Titanoboa's main food source, also lived until modern day. Set a trap with a crocodile and wait for a boa to come to you. Once it devoured its meal, like most snakes, it would be tired and less likely to attack. This would be the perfect time to strike. At the same time, countless books and television shows would be made about the Titanoboa. Nature shows like BBC's Planet Earth would do everything in their power, even risk lives to get footage of it. It's not likely that it would be kept in zoos. After all, it's huge and it would have to be fed crocodiles. No one knows exactly why Titanoboa went extinct. The main theory is that the temperature of the earth began to cool. The hotter the temperature, the bigger the snake. But the same is true for the opposite. This is because in places where the temperature is constantly hot, the metabolism of reptiles operates sufficiently. The bigger a snake gets, the more energy it needs to sustain it. But once the global temperature began to drop, the Titanoboa's metabolism could not adjust, and eventually, it went extinct. And I'm not mad about it. I don't know about you, but even small snakes scare the crap out of me.
It always comes back to the Titanoboa, doesn't it? Millions of views on this channel come from our prehistoric mate, the Titanoboa snake. You love that big snake. You love it so much that you wish it was alive today, right? Well, you may want to take a seat because the reality of living with a slippery apex predator may not be exactly what you're looking for. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that loves a cryptid as much as a real historical monster. The channel that enjoys talking about an SCP as much as we do talking about alternate histories. I'm your host, Slytherin Queen Rebecca Felgate, and in this episode I'm getting snaky as I ask what if the Titanoboa snake was still alive today? Yes. Before we get into this video, I want to know, have you ever seen a snake? I've seen a couple. I actually never saw one when I lived in England, even though I know we have a few, but I've seen a whole load of snakes in Canada. I've seen grass snakes, garter snakes, and water snakes, but luckily no rattlesnakes because they're killers. They've all been pretty small even in modern day standards, so I've never seen a snake that's like really scared me. Do let me know your snake stories in the comment section down below though. Also do leave a thumbs up on this video and share it with a friend. Check out our description box for links to our sources and for all of the information of people that went into making this video. Stick around to the end because I'm going to be reading out some of your comments. Okay, Titanoboa babe, what you got? The Titanoboa was first discovered in the lowland tropics of northern Colombia in an area called Carajon. The fossil of the outrageously big snake was discovered in a coal mine, nicely preserved. These days the land is hot and arid, but back when Snake Bay lived an estimated 58 million years ago, the land was foresty and swampy. The discovery was made in 2009, so really we haven't known about this snake for very long at all. In the 10 years in which we have studied it, scientists have concluded it was between 13 to 14 meters in length, so roughly up to a maximum of 50 feet, which is around the size of a house. The snake was very heavy at 2,500 pounds, so that's around 1,133 kilos. If you guys need a visual, here is one. As part of the Titanoboa Monster Snake documentary, the Smithsonian Channel asked sculptor Kevin Hockley to create a full-size replica of this monster snake, and this is what it looked like. Horrifying, right? Big boy snake. The snake was non-venomous, which is a big relief, am I right? Although let's not breathe any premature sighs of relief because actually this big snake is a hugger, and by that I mean it will squeeze you until you die. The Titanoboa was a constrictor, thought to be able to crush its prey with a force of 400 pounds per square inch. That's some force. Beyond that, it also has some supermassive fangs, all the better for eating you with. These were sharp and needle-like teeth for puncturing soft tissues and holding down prey. So what kind of prey would the Titanoboa get down it? It seems that the apex predator ate live crocodiles. Seriously, this snake has no chill. If it could eat a croc, it would absolutely eat you, no question. But the good news is that Snakey Baby only had to eat once every 6 or so months and could easily last a year with just one meal. While the remains of 28 of the snakes were found, it is impossible to know how big the population of Titanoboas were. They survived for just a 2 million long period from 60 to 58 million years ago. I say just, but humans have only been around for 1/10 of that time, and look how much damage we have done, and we've spawned. Oh, how we've spawned. The Titanoboa, as we know, lived in what was then a swampy part of Colombia. It shares some common traits with snakes that these days live in the Amazon. I don't think the Titanoboa would be bothering the good people of the Caribbean Colombia if it was still alive today, simply because the conditions have changed so much that it wouldn't be able to exist there. Perhaps the reason it went extinct in the first place. If the snake did exist, perhaps it too would live in the Amazon, and I'm sure it would have offed a few humans by now. Also, trekking in the Amazon would be literally the scariest activity you could do ever. Perhaps in the past we would have sent our convicts there just to be killed off by the giant snake. Maybe today there'd be a gruesome survivalist reality TV show in which people try and survive in the wilderness without being set upon by giant snake. As we know, our feeble human bones would have been easily crushed by the snake, who would then swallow us whole as a snack. But what about today? Could we take the snake down with bullets? In theory, yes, but we would need a lot of them. The Titanoboa is fast and fleshy. There's a good chance it could swipe at a human a fair distance away before it even got the chance to pull a trigger. The Amazon is the world's largest tropical forest, covering much of Brazil, extending into Colombia, Peru, and small amounts of Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, and Suriname. Anyone watching from these countries? How do you feel about snakes? If the snake was still alive and had made the Amazon its home, it would have had a lot of space to breed. It is thought that the Titanoboa lived in and around the water, so perhaps the Amazon River would be awash with massive snakes. The Amazon River is of course 6,400 kilometers long, so you know. People of Colombia, Brazil, and Peru may find their water sources pretty terrifying. In fact, had these snakes prevailed over the past 58 million years instead of dying out, perhaps cities like Manaus, which now has a population population of 2 million simply would not exist. If they did, then giant snakes would be a hazard. While this city is absolutely bumping now, there have been population crashes in the Amazon history. Maybe there wouldn't have been any at all if there were giant snakes lurking about. I feel like the main issue here is if the Titanoboa snake was still alive, what else would be surviving and thriving? If it were just the snakes alone, I'm pretty sure we could take them, but what about all its prehistoric friends? Back when the massive snake the size of a bus was reigning terror, there were also giant reptiles and turtles and massive crocodiles. The Titanoboa likely died out because of changing temperatures and a lack of proper habitat. But had it and its massive mate survived, including a 7-foot-long lungfish, 1, the conditions for the evolution of humans may not have been right, but 2, maybe we would have evolved, but we wouldn't have been top of the food chain. Maybe we would have been gobbled up. Another way in which the Titanoboa could be alive today is if we Jurassic Parked it, like made a huge zoo of old extinct and scary animals for times gone by. Scientists are indeed today working on bringing back woolly mammoths, but if we can learn anything from science fiction, playing God and bringing things back from the prehistoric dead is a bad idea, not least because we may not have as much control as we think we do. So that is that. Riddle me this, what would you do if the Titanoboa was still alive? Would we be living in some kind of crazy Hollywood sci-fi fiction world where everyone screams and there are snakes everywhere? Would we bang it up in the Chamber of Secrets? Would Voldemort use it as his familiar? Would it speak Parseltongue? What do you think it would be like to be swallowed alive by such a beast?
If the Titanoboa snake took over the world? Short answer, we'd worship them as our new god. I'm just kidding. Let's actually dive into it. So for those of you unaware, the Titanoboa was an insanely massive snake that would definitely be the apex predator if it were still around today. These things make anacondas look like nothing. It's believed the Titanoboa was about 42 feet in length and weighed around 2,500 pounds. And this is based off of a couple fossils that we found, so they might have even been bigger. They would eat large turtles and crocs, but I have a feeling if they roamed the earth today, it would have absolutely no problem eating anything and everything. If you want to know more about these creatures and haven't seen our video titled "What if the Titanoboa snake didn't go extinct?", I'd highly recommend checking that out. So what would actually happen if they took over the world? Well, life as we know it would be completely different. Now when I say take over the world, I don't mean they become the emperor. I mean, if they were so overpopulated that they literally ran the world. Think of The Walking Dead, but replace all the zombies with these snakes. Yeah, it's a scary sight. But how would we survive, if at all? What would we be able to do to even stand a chance? Let's explore. The Titanoboa lived in South America, more specifically the likes of Peru and Colombia. They are believed to have made a habitat in swampy areas, but much like other snakes, they most likely wouldn't have a problem hanging from trees or slithering on the ground. Although they wouldn't be the most hidden due to their size, that really wouldn't matter because, as I previously mentioned, they'd be the apex predators, not us. We'd be the ones trying to hide from them. Now, knowing they lived in South America, hypothetically, we could all just agree to live in a colder climate, say Antarctica or even Canada. There's no way these things could possibly survive the cold temperatures there. But how long can the entire world's population live in Antarctica? Or even Canada? We're talking over 7 billion people in one country. Or maybe we split those numbers in 2 countries. Russia is the biggest country, and Canada comes in at number 2. Both have much colder climates compared to that of South America, but with climate change and a rise in temperature worldwide, aside from us having to make sure we have enough resources in those 2 countries, who knows how long the Titanoboa would stay in one area. Of course, it would also be a problem because we'd have to find ways to not only defend ourselves from these animals, but other people. Desperate times call for desperate measures. People with families will do anything for their kids, while people who have nothing to live for example, someone who's lost their entire family, will be much more selfish with the focus being solely on their own survival. This would cause complete chaos and anarchy among those still living, aside from the fact that we'd have to find a way to not get eaten or killed by the Titanoboa. Again, this is assuming the Titanoboas don't also take over the colder climates such as Russia, northern Canada, or Antarctica. But we also have to take into consideration other animals. Bears, for example, could give us some trouble. Even with guns to defend ourselves, eventually, we run out of ammo and have to find a way to make more. Disease would certainly run rampant, meaning those ill would need to be quarantined, and then there's also a concern of hygiene in general. How do we shower? Would electricity and hot water be available? How can I post on Instagram? I'm kidding. Maybe at first, but for how long? I mean, eventually all these things, well, they would run out. There's a possibility that some live in the middle of the ocean, but again, supplies would seem to run out very quickly. Anyone who's elderly or sick would most likely be the first to go. There would have to be a worldwide ban on having new children because it would take away from those already living. Eventually, the human race would go completely extinct unless one man was able to change everything for us. That one man? Elon Musk. If he was able to continuously fly people from Earth to Mars, and we were able to inhabit a new planet, then maybe, just maybe, we'd be able to find find a way to survive the Titanoboa taking over the world. Alright, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. In reality, it seems the Titanoboa would set humans back thousands of years. We'd have to start living like cavemen again, making our own weapons and hunting for food, finding ways to stay warm. It really would be quite disastrous. I don't know if the entire human race would in fact be wiped out altogether, but a large majority of us would definitely go. As Darwin said, it's not the strongest or smartest who survive, but those who can adapt the most. In this case, those who could find a way to adapt to living with these slithering monsters taking over our planet would be the ones that would live the longest. But again, even if I was able to outlive most, would I really want to bring someone else into this world? Probably not. Now that's just me. Assuming a new society of people that survived after most humans died off wanted to continue reproducing, which would be fine. I mean, not really, but anyway. What could possibly happen to them? Well, with rising temperatures, the Titanoboa would eventually be comfortable moving up north, to the point that they literally would be in all parts of the world, except maybe the middle of the ocean. So if somehow, some way, humans were able to adapt and breathe underwater, which as we know, as of now at least, is impossible, I think everyone would die off thanks to the greater species, the Titanoboa.
Imagine this. You're out for a peaceful evening walk when all of a sudden you hear something massive rustling in the bushes behind you. Before you know it, you feel yourself being constricted by some slithery, scaly, massive monster. It's the Titanoboa. Would you be able to escape his death grip? The Titanoboa holds the record for being the biggest snake in the world. It was the biggest snake when it was living, and it's still the biggest snake to this day, even though it's extinct. So today on Life's Biggest Questions, I'll be answering the deadly question: what if you got attacked by the Titanoboa snake? Make sure y'all give this video a big thumbs up and comment down below what video you want to see from us next. The Titanoboa is massive. This creature was 50 feet long and weighed around 2,500 pounds. A beast that size is quite terrifying. It honestly seems like you wouldn't stand a chance. Thankfully, these creatures are extinct, but they used to threaten the planet 60 million years ago. In the early 2000s, that's when we started to learn more about this creature. In 2009, fossils of the Titanoboa were found in a coal mine in Colombia. From there, we were able to figure out just how big and scary it used to be. So let's say the Titanoboa made a comeback. I mean, it's 2020, anything can happen, right? So let's say they once again ruled the world. Then what? Well, first off, it's important to note that the Titanoboa thrived in hot and humid climates. Back then, the ecosystem of South America was vastly different than it is today. The temperature was several degrees hotter yearly than today, meaning the Titanoboa wouldn't be able to survive long in our current climate. But this doesn't make the return of the Titanoboa impossible. In fact, it's quite possible. So it's thought that the reason they went extinct in the first place was because of climate change. The lower temperatures favored smaller snakes, not big jumbo ones like these guys. But every day our climate is changing. Dr. Jonathan Bloke, an expert in vertebrate evolution at the University of Florida, said, and I quote, "Biology is amazingly adaptable. Changing climates and changing continents are the fuel of evolution. But things that happen very quickly can result in the types of change we might not view very positively." Meaning we could get to a point where our ecosystem was the same as it was millions of years ago. On top of that, Dr. Carlos Jaramillo, a scientist with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, said, and I quote, "As the temperature increases, you have the probability they will come back. But it takes geological time to develop a new species. It could take 1,000,000 years, but perhaps they will." So they both believe it's quite possible for this snake to be reborn. If that's the case, would humans stand a chance against them? Well, let's look at the way they hunt and attack their prey. The Titanoboa were known as a crushing machine because they would wrap around their prey and crush them with ease. They have an incredibly strong constricting force of 400 pounds per inch. You want to know what that would feel like? Well, that's roughly the same weight as lying under 1.5 Brooklyn bridges. Humans can't survive bridges collapsing on them. What makes you think we could survive this snake's death grip? On a positive note, the Titanoboa wasn't a venomous snake. So if you get bit by it, you wouldn't die. You would just have like a massive gash wound on your body. Now, the Titanoboa were known for mainly attacking and eating crocodiles. Crocodiles were their main food source. In fact, they could swallow a crocodile whole. But here's the thing. after eating one crocodile, they could then go the rest of the year without eating anything else. That's insane. So if a Titanoboa approaches you, you better hope that it's already eaten. Now, we don't know if the Titanoboa would be interested in eating humans because obviously we weren't around when they were alive. So honestly, they may not even be interested in eating us. If that's the case, then they wouldn't pose a big threat to us if we just left them alone. Much like most animals on this earth, if you leave them alone, they will leave you alone. But once it feels like you pose a threat, then they will attack. In this case, if a Titanoboa comes near you, you shouldn't panic, run, flail your arms, or scream. Instead, just back away slowly and try to remain calm. But let's say that all fails and the snake attacks you. Even if it wasn't hungry, if it thinks it's threatened, it will kill you. It just won't eat you afterwards. So it would wrap around your body until it restricts your airflow or crushes you to dust. Which brings me to this point. Is there any way for humans to fight back against this snake? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a definite answer, but we got theories. So it said that if a snake is wrapped around you, constricting you, and you struggle and panic, it will just squeeze tighter and make you die faster. It feels threatened by your movements, and so it will show no mercy. But for the Titanoboa, it's not like their main goal is to hunt and kill you. So again, let's say they aren't hungry. They ate their crocodile, they're all good. If it sees you and you freak out, it's going to bite you and then constrict you. But it doesn't want to hold on to you any more than you want it to. With boa constrictors, if you show that you're not attacking it, then it will release you and slither away. But like I said, if you try to hit it or injure the boa, it will squeeze tighter. So maybe with the Titanoboa, just staying calm and still as it constricts you is the way to go. Hopefully then it will show that you mean no harm and it will release you. Same thing goes if it bites you. The Titanoboa's teeth were angled slightly inward, meaning if you try to pull your hand or arm or leg from its mouth, its teeth will sink deeper into you. The best thing for you to do is relax and wait until the snake releases you from its grip. But I wouldn't suggest running away super fast after it releases you. It might bite or attack you again. So just wait until it slithers away. Now that's exactly what you would do for a normal boa constrictor. As we know by now, the Titanoboa is way bigger and far more powerful. So these tips might not work at all. It's hard to say how vicious these snakes were. Maybe it would go around ending animals in a blink of eye, just dominating anything that gets in its path. Or maybe it's more like a modern day boa constrictor, and it will let you go if you mean no harm. Let's hope for the latter. Now here's another thing I learned about the Titanoboa. It said that it was similar to a modern day green anaconda, in the sense that it likes being in murky water. In fact, since it was so heavy, it liked being in the water because it could move faster in it. It's also said that it could hold its breath underwater for around 45 minutes, which is horrifying. Imagine you're swimming and all of a sudden you feel that thing tickle your feet. No thank you. But with that being said, it didn't really like dry land. It would move slower on dry land and it didn't climb trees because of its size and weight. So if you encounter a Titanoboa, the best thing to do is get away from any water and climb up a tree. Then just wait it out until it slithers away. Upon researching about snakes, I also found out that if you're being attacked by a boa constrictor, then spray it with vinegar, rubbing alcohol, ethanol, or whiskey or vodka. Or soak a rag with any of those liquids on it and put it over its mouth and nose. Or just pour those liquids all over its face directly. That is said to make the snake release almost instantly. It's because snakes have permeable skin and those liquids are very strong for them. It will irritate their skin and mouth. Would this work for a Titanoboa? Maybe, but with its size, you would need a lot of vinegar or alcohol. Not only that, if it attacks you, you don't really have time to go get those supplies, unless you just happen to carry it with you. Even then, if it wraps around your arms, you wouldn't be able to grab your supplies. So in the end, I think we can all say the Titanoboa wins this fight. If the Titanoboa was back, it would be best to avoid any and every area that it could be lurking in. Its death grip could kill you in seconds, and you wouldn't be able to free yourself. Again, like I said before, it would be best to leave this creature alone. As soon as it becomes threatened, it will strike you. But let's just hope that the Titanoboa doesn't make a comeback anytime soon. The Titanoboa was a 48-foot long, 2-ton snake that ate crocodiles for breakfast. It was the biggest snake to have ever lived in the history of our planet, and it lived 60 million years ago during the Paleocene era. If Titanoboa were alive today, it would most definitely pose a threat to humanity, most specifically humanity that lived in tropical rainforests near the equator. But if Titanoboa didn't go extinct, would that mean it would be invincible? Today, Life's Biggest Questions asks, how could you defeat a Titanoboa snake? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that imagines the impossible. I'm Charlotte Dobre and thanks for checking out another one of our videos. And a big welcome to all our new subscribers who found our channel through our video, What if the Titanoboa snake didn't go extinct? As a big thank you, we've decided to make a series of videos on the Titanoboa snake expanding on that idea. Make sure you stick around until the end of the video where we will be responding to some of your comments. And if you want to connect with the creative team behind Life's Biggest Questions, check out the description for all the links to our social media. There are huge snakes like anacondas and pythons that are alive in this day and age that are capable of killing humans and swallowing them whole. Giant pythons have made headlines for swallowing humans, like back in June of 2018, when a 23-foot python swallowed an Indonesian woman whole after she had gone to check on her vegetable garden. This python was killed by the residents of the Indonesian town so they could extract the body of the slain woman from its belly. A 23-foot python is still half the size of Titanoboa, a snake that would have been much harder to kill. So how could you defeat a Titanoboa snake? Well, Titanoboas would be extremely difficult to evade if they were roaming around the jungle, hungry because they hadn't eaten in weeks. 58 million years ago, Titanoboa was the king of the jungle. They required warmer tropical climates and would likely only live near the equator. Titanoboa hunted mostly in water and was a swimmer. It would be very difficult to navigate the swampy terrain of the rainforest, let alone do so when there was a giant snake slithering about. Titanoboa had a huge jaw with sharp teeth pointed toward its throat that kept the prey moving toward its stomach. Like other snakes, its strike was probably very fast, and it moved around effortlessly. But does that mean it would be impossible to defeat a Titanoboa snake? Well, maybe for early humans who didn't know much about it, but I highly doubt indigenous people, if they did manage to live at the same time as Titanoboa, would know nothing about how to defeat or evade Titanoboa. After all, when it comes down to it, Titanoboa was a snake, and snakes are not invincible. In fact, they have one very notable weakness. Sure, to be killed by a Titanoboa would not be a fun experience. Like other snakes, Titanoboa would wrap around its prey so it couldn't escape. Every time its victim exhales, Titanoboa's grip around it gets tighter, eventually causing its prey to suffocate. That's when Titanoboa opens its jaws that are equipped with flexible ligaments and proceeds to swallow its prey whole. Even though this might seem like a terrifying scene, swallowing such a huge victim is not an easy thing for a snake, even a snake as big as old Tebow. Yes, I just called him Tebow, and yes, it does kind of make him seem less scary, but I like that nickname. After Tebow has consumed its prey whole, that is when it's most vulnerable. Titanoboa is going to be stuffed to the brim until it fully digests its meal. I mean, that's pretty relatable. It's pretty difficult to do anything but watch TV after going back for second helpings at your mom's Thanksgiving feast. I can't imagine Titanoboa would have a very easy time doing anything either after eating a whole crocodile. It's not clear how long it would take for Titanoboa to digest a pig or a crocodile, or even a human. The warmer a snake's body is, the faster they digest their food. It takes 3 to 5 days for a regular sized snake to digest its food, and huge anacondas from South Africa eat larger prey, so their digestion takes weeks. I would imagine the same would be true for Titanoboa. The good news is this would be the perfect time to attack a Titanoboa snake. As I previously stated in my last video, if you want to set a trap for this great snake, you could do so using its favorite food source, either a crocodile or a pig. Snakes are known to be notoriously picky eaters. If they don't find any suitable prey, they go weeks without eating. Titanoboa wouldn't be able to help itself if it came across a victim in the jungle so beautifully set out for it to eat. Once Titanoboa scarfs down its meal, it would be pretty much helpless. Indigenous peoples could have attacked Titanoboa using spears or even slicing it in two using a huge sword. And of course in modern times, when a Titanoboa had consumed its meal, it would be easy to kill it using modern weapons like guns, firing at its head.
Titanoboa is easily one of the most interesting and talked about prehistoric creatures known to us. Believed to grow up to 50 feet in length, weighing up to 2,500 pounds, and at its thickest parts coming in at 3 feet in diameter, this beast is not something you want roaming in the jungle. Thankfully, they went extinct about 60 million years ago, and that is likely the reason the human race was able to evolve. Because I can tell you guys right now, if you think Neanderthals fighting a saber-tooth would be a tough battle, well, a Titanoboa wouldn't even flinch while swallowing a tiny prehistoric human whole. Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, what if the Titanoboa didn't go extinct? How's it going, guys? Welcome to LBQ. I'm your host, Jared Bronstein, and as I'm sure you can tell by the title, this is an updated video. As you know, as the years go on, researchers and scientists make new discoveries. More information comes to light, and we're able to come to new conclusions based on said newfound evidence. And with that in mind, we thought it would be interesting to update some of our older videos, such as the Titanoboa. Aside from that, new hosts could provide a different perspective of how things could potentially play out. Moving forward, if this is something you guys are interested in, please let us know in the comments down below. I encourage you guys to drop some comments with other video ideas you'd like to see on our channel, and stick around to the end for some common replies. For now, let's jump right into this one. So for starters, where did these things live? In tropical climates. More specifically, fossils of the gigantic snake were found in Colombia, which has led many to believe these things enjoyed warm temperatures, residing close to the equator. At the time of this recording, a full-size skeleton of a Titanoboa has yet to be discovered, but there is currently a total of 28 fossils that have been recovered. The majority of these fossils are ribs, vertebrae, and some skulls. And speaking of their skulls, more specifically their jaws, well, it's believed that top and bottoms could become unhinged. Well, unhinged isn't the right word, as technically they aren't doing that. In fact, plenty of snakes that still roam the earth do this, and it's possible because snakes don't have their jaws connected the same way we do. That's how they could open their mouths so wide to consume other animals and prey. But they also use their teeth, which they would dig into their prey and walk their jaws top then bottom to consume the full body of an animal. With the ability to move the top and bottom of their jaws independently, it made things much easier. Similar to someone climbing a glacier and digging their picks into the ice while pulling themselves up, snakes, including the Titanoboa, did the exact same thing. The only difference is the glacier is the snake's prey, and those picks are the snake's teeth. And due to the fact that the Titanoboas weren't venomous, at least that we're currently aware of, there's a common belief these things likely hunted the same way a modern day boa constrictor would, wrapping itself around its victim, squeezing every last breath out of the animal until ultimately it stopped fighting. However, there is also a common belief that they would stalk prey by laying dormant in water, which would not only allow the snake to move faster, but also help with the element of surprise, similar to an anaconda. Considering the snake's size, it's not surprising that it wouldn't necessarily move the fastest on land. Although they would slither around, likely not climbing up trees but more so around them. As we know, weight doesn't mean as much in water. Of course, temperatures have also changed. 60 million years ago, the average temperature in the humid jungle where these beasts roamed was about 90 degrees or possibly even in the hundreds. And this temperature played a huge factor in the size of the Titanoboa, as well as its movement. Considering the reptile is cold-blooded, they need a constant heat source to operate at their peak performance. Being at a hot temperature at all times allowed the snake's metabolism to work as fast as possible and at maximum efficiency, which meant the snakes had extra energy to focus on their physical growth. This theory has been debated in the scientific community, but there seems to be a common consensus that the Earth's warmer climates in the prehistoric times allowed for animals to grow in size. Oxygen also had a huge role. 60 million years ago, there was a much greener Earth, with more land, more trees, and a lot more oxygen. Aside from the billions of humans that weren't breathing every second of every day, there also wasn't any carbon emissions from cars, planes, you get the idea. In general, the planet was a much different place 60 million years ago than it was today. So given what we know about this prehistoric monstrosity of a snake, hypothetically if it didn't go extinct, what would happen? Well, under the assumption that these things never went extinct, that means they found a way to adapt to life on Earth stemming back to 60 million years ago. It's no secret that the average temperature has dropped significantly over tens of millions of years. The Earth itself has reshaped, at least in the sense of rising waters, less habitable land, and of course humans. Animals have also come and gone, and the reality is, if the Titanoboa managed to adapt and found a way to avoid extinction, it's inevitable that these things would shrink in size. Currently, the largest known snake living is the green anaconda, which can grow up to 30 feet in length and weigh about 550 pounds. In regards to diameter, the female snakes, which grow the largest, can get up to 1 foot around. In comparison to the Titanoboa, it's about a fifth of its weight and half its size. So I think it's safe to say, even if the Titanoboa did gradually become smaller in size, all things considered, they would still likely weigh at least 1 ton and could possibly grow up to 30 or 40 feet in length. And it's not like them going extinct would necessarily drastically change our lives as we know it. For starters, much like green anacondas, the Titanoboa would also reside in the tropics or jungles such as the Amazon in Brazil. In regards to prey, well, the Titanoboa would certainly once again be an apex predator, eating anything and everything. But factoring in that over the years, the Titanoboa would inevitably be feeding on different prey, it's quite possible that this changes the entire ecosystem down south. Whether that means less food for other animals, which in turn reduces their size naturally over the years, or the opposite, it's impossible to say for sure how things play out. And by opposite, I mean other animals grow in size because they have such a large animal to feed on, assuming that at some point, these snakes would also die and eventually become prey to other animals. Now in regards to how it would affect the human race, well I mean sure, every now and then you may have snakes slithering into cities and towns that usually border the Amazon or jungle. The same way Florida has their alligators or Canadians have moose knocking on their doors daily, the idea of a Titanoboa slithering through the streets of Rio wouldn't be so crazy. That being said, it likely wouldn't happen all that often. And if it did, well, truth be told, people would probably just axe the thing until it died or shoot it. Again, assuming it wouldn't be 2,500 pounds and 50 feet long, taking this thing down with some weapons wouldn't be impossible, but I wouldn't test my luck. There's also the reality that these snakes may benefit humans one way or another. Of course, there's the snake skin, which could be used to make material, although I don't necessarily love that idea, or even the idea of the snake being a local delicacy. Aside from this, it's quite possible the snake, whether it be the skin, the bone, the flesh, maybe its eyes or even teeth, have some sort of healing properties in them. Again, with it being a prehistoric animal, we only know so much about it, connecting the dots as we learn more year after year. And with this still being a relatively new discovery, with the first known fossils being dug up in 2004, well, we may need to make another updated video in the next few years. It seems year after year, we're learning more about the snake that seemingly ruled any land it roamed, and I think one thing we could all agree on is that it's probably a good thing these guys aren't around anymore. Even if we could take them down with a gun or some weapons, who wants to attempt scaring away or killing a 40-foot snake that would likely swallow any human whole? Now as always guys, let us know your thoughts on this video and also let us know if you want more of these updated type videos. There's a lot of videos we've done in the past that we can update as more and newer information has come to light over the years. As previously mentioned, different hosts also offer different perspectives of how things could play out, which in a sense makes two completely different videos, even if the idea, or in this case question, is the same.
Titanoboa. Holy moly, the giant prehistoric snake that just keeps on giving, or in many ways, should we say, keeps growing. As if the slithering serpentine leviathan of the jungle wasn't already terrifyingly large enough. You see, over here at Life's Biggest Questions, we've contorted all manners of fantastic beasts and gigantic monsters through our hypothetical redefining machine, giving them extra physical properties or shaking up their genetic makeup in an effort to see how they would have potentially altered the course of ancient history. So without further delay then, let's see how this giant serpent would have fared if it never stopped growing. Hello internet, what's going on, and once again welcome back to the most inquisitive channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. As per usual, I'll be your disembodied floating voice, Jack Finch, as today we curiously ask the question, what if the Titanoboa snake doubled in size? If we're going to see what the Titanoboa would be like at twice the size, we may as well give them the ability to breathe fire whilst we're at it, right? Nah, I'm just kidding, that would be a ridiculous idea, just like the plot of Gods of Egypt, where the answer to the question, would you like dragons or snakes, seemingly was a simple yes. But anyway, enough of that, you get the picture. Let's see what's happening with the old giant snake waiting patiently in the corner. Now, if you're scratching your head thinking, wait, what the hell is a Titanoboa? I would politely inform you that Life's Biggest Questions have a list longer than your arm of equally intriguing and potentially terrifying hypothetical scenarios that we've pitted this ancient creature against. And if you're so inclined to expanding your paleobiological knowledge, then now would be high time to trudge through them and see exactly just what we'd be facing off against here. But for those of you that haven't, let's first take a brief look at the ancient titan of the jungle and just exactly what he's got cooking under the hood. To do that, we'll have to cast our hypothetical gaze back a while, well, 58 million years back to be precise, to a period just a few million years after the fall of the dinosaurs. And now, as you may know from that gaping hole of an asteroid, there was quite a void left behind after the fall of the lizard kings. Now, back in the day, pretty much everything was downright huge. In fact, everything was hotter, wetter, and far, far bigger. Trees had wider leaves down to the massive amount of rainfall, 150 inches or so per year, and temperatures would hover around a stifling mid to high 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Turtles had shells twice the size of a manhole cover, and crocodiles were more than a dozen feet long. But all of them paled in comparison to the Titanoboa, the undisputed lord of the jungle, a snake that measured in at between 42 and 49 feet long and weighing more than a ton at a mean weight of 2,500 pounds. It was as long as a school bus and weighed more than a small rhino. It looked pretty much identical to the modern day boa constrictor, yet behaved more like today's water-dwelling anaconda. To cut a long story short, it was absolutely freaking huge and also terrifying. And to cut an even longer story shorter, it was unrivaled in its swamp jungle home. It was prey to nothing and predator to everything. If it wanted to eat anything, a turtle or crocodile, it would, and it did. But what if it never stopped eating? What if for thousands of years, instead of eventually going extinct due to it succumbing to the shifting climate, it just kept eating and that 50-foot long Titanoboa eventually doubled in its size? Just imagine the sight of a creature that big, never mind just a snake. 100 feet of pure, unrivaled serpentine flesh. To put that into perspective, the largest animal on the planet and the largest animal ever known to have existed is the blue whale that measured roughly 98 feet in length. This guy, our Titanoboa buddy, would be bigger than that, probably. The thing is though, down to its massive size, the blue whale has evolved to a point where its body is actually pretty constrained to not being a predator. Despite the size of its mouth, the dimensions of a blue whale's throat prevents it from swallowing an object wider than a beach ball, down to the fact that to sustain itself in the ocean, it eats around 40 million krill in a single day, and when fully expanded, its mouth is large enough to hold around 90 tons of food and water. And that's where our problem would lie for the Titanoboa. Being that size, it would have to seriously augment its behaviour to sustain itself in this brave new world. And in the likeliest scenario, that would have probably meant leaving the hot, humid swamps of its native prehistoric Mexico. Hey, you know how the saying goes, right? Big snake in a small pond, I guess. The point is though, here's where things get super difficult for the hypothetical Titanoboa, and at such a huge size it would have had to slither off to pastures new just to sustain itself, with the likeliest prey being giant prehistoric fish that swam in the oceans, down to its genus being dominantly piscivorous. To head into the oceans though, that would have meant sacrificing its most important of amenities. You see, the Titanoboa liked it hot, in fact so hot that the likeliest scenario for the creature's habitat would have had to have averaged around 32 degrees Celsius for it to have thrived. That's exactly why, still to this day, larger ectothermic animals are found in the tropics where it is hottest, and smaller ones are found farther from the equator. For the Titanoboa to have survived and thrived at twice the size, it would have meant moving to pastures new with very specific parameters, somewhere in the ocean that was really, really hot. And guess what? Luckily for the Titanoboa, the oceans were absolutely boiling at this point in history. Well, I say that hyperbolically because they were just really, really warm. The warmest actually being a portion of the North Atlantic where rapid volcanic activity would eventually lead to the creation of Iceland. But there's another problem for our Titanoboa to face, because sadly, it's not all plain sailing or slithering. During the Paleocene, there was quite a shortage of fish. And by shortage, I mean after the whole extinction event thing, nearly 90% of all calcifying plankton were destroyed, and it would take roughly another 7 million years to fully recover. And guess what? Our Titanoboa is a big growing boy, and it's going to take a little bit more than a few ancient clams and snails to keep him fed. You see, whatever the habitat, an apex predator needs its prey, and it's pretty slim pickings at most points of the Paleocene era for a creature the same size as a modern day blue whale. Yeah, there are sharks and stingrays for the most part, but the hunting methods of the Titanoboa are based on physical constriction or straight up whole hog swallowing to feed on its prey, and as we said previously, it would have had to rapidly adapt its feeding processes similar to that of a blue whale to have even existed. And also, there's another problem. You see, at this period of time, it is thought that a particular species of shark was filling in the niche left behind by the sparsely populated ocean, feeding on the other sharks and stingrays that remained. A species of shark known as the Ododus obliquus, the prehistoric ancestor of the megalodon that measured in at over 40 feet. And guess what? He would have been just as, if not hungrier, than the Titanoboa, favouring the similar warm waters that the giant snake would have had to have favoured.